All right, here we go. We are going to start to work inside the eye, and some of these photo references that I have in Google Classroom can really help you. And you don't need to follow them exactly, but there are usually a few things that are in common. Generally, the irises get darker around the outside and a little bit lighter toward the inside. Generally, the reflection is pretty blank. You can add a little bit of color in there if you want to, but leaving it blank is always a safe way to go. And many times there is that shading, some kind of shading on the sclera, the white of the eye. It's a little darker up here. And let's even add more drama to it and make it really obvious. There's also that nice sense of a tear duct. And look at the little shiny bits on the tear duct, just like the reflection in the eye itself. See, each one of those has a little bit of it gives it a form. It gives it some volume. There's a little reflection right there in that one, and there's a nice little edge there. So we're going to try to bring out all that stuff, and I'll just get this one started and put it into time lapse and do a little more. Excuse me. It doesn't matter where you work first. I would do ink first. If you're going to do some inking in here, I would do ink first because colored pencil, I'm sorry, yeah, do ink first because colored pencil undercoats, the ink won't kind of soak into the paper as well with that waxy buildup of colored pencil. All right, so let's get in here closer, and I'll try to stay on screen the whole time. And I might kind of flash a few of these back and forth a little bit. So what I did first, I took the regular Sharpie and I started to just fill in the pupil. Do it carefully. And we want to fill that in completely as black as possible. You could use watercolor, you could use colored pencil to do that, but I think that's a lot of time is a good first move, so it automatically kind of is satisfying and it comes to life a little bit more compared to having an empty pupil. That little dark outline around the reflection we typically wouldn't do, but we're going to go dark enough around that to make that kind of disappear. All right, so let's start with the sclera. It already has a sense of form with a little highlight in the middle, but I am going to add a little bit more. Whoop, scratch that. I said I was going to do some inking first. So let's do, and we can do some, especially with Sharpie, we can do some inking after also. But I'll just do a few of these. Gonna really get these eyelashes, make more of them, and get them thicker. And again, you could do this with a fine tip brush in watercolor. You can do this with acrylic paint if you want to, especially if we need to do some touch-up later with acrylic paint. That's always fine. All right, so I'm adding more eyelashes, not just the ones from the tracing that you did. Also, look how thick they're getting toward the base. That's gonna add some drama too. And the eyelashes, remember, always have kind of that swoop, making it go down into the white of the eye and then swoop out. And remember the whole idea of them changing directions from one side to the other. Okay, so, and they should really kind of be kind of thick along here. They should all kind of connect to each other. Now, if you want to, if you our final one's going to be bigger than this. If you want to, you can use a regular Sharpie. I'll do that here for a moment. But sometimes the regular Sharpie doesn't come to a nice tip out here. So what I've done before is take a micron or the small Sharpie, and sometimes I'll come right out here and make a nice little tip that tapers away nicely. Same kind of thing down below with the eyelashes. They all kind of have a curve. I'm gonna put a few more in there, and they also get a little thicker toward the base as they When they come out, they're going to thin out and taper away. These can be done with black colored pencil. That's okay too. And you can mix and match. There's that crease right behind there. Not all eyes have that crease, but if you would like to, you can kind of make that crease happen a little bit more. We're going to enhance this area with colored pencil as well. I sometimes do this in colored pencil. I'm just going to add a little bit thicker quality there in ink. With that area, I'm kind of bouncing around here, but with that area, we want to make the middle of that area a little bit lighter than this side and that side. That's going to help create that sense of form. So with colored pencil at some point, I am going to do some shading. You'll see it at the end, hopefully. A little bit more here, less here, and more there. Same thing with the bottom below the eyelid. I'm going to do a little extra, make sure it's a little more there, maybe a little less in here, and make sure there's some shading right in here to capture that sense of form. Okay, so again, I'm bouncing back and forth just for this video. I'm going to use a little more blue, and I'm going to try to get this to softly fade away. I am going to include violet or blue violet to capture a little more of that contrast. And again, I'm just going to do a little bit live. I'll do more in time lapse. Remember that idea of a shadow that runs across. So I'm definitely going to go darker up here and let it fade away. That will happen all the way across. Eve all the way over to here. And let that line right there be kind of dark. And we're going to let this fade away to create that shadow under the eyelid. We're going to let this fade in a little bit. Look how the paper bounces also. So when you're doing your inking especially, hold the paper down. I'm going to let this kind of that dark edge where the rim of the eyelid is. Also, the rim of the tear duct needs to have a clarity to it. And I'm going to bring a few little marks up into there to try to capture the little highlights we talked about. Okay, hopefully that's getting started. Around the outside of the iris, I'll just do a little bit. I'm going to do some shading and make these little spikes. Some of these little spikes can come out from the pupil. Really try to make sure you think of it as a target right in the middle. And all those spikes move out just like you might think of bicycle spokes on a tire. So a little bit of the little spikies and some shading that kind of fades away. And sometimes I get in there and kind of do some obvious, look at this one. There was a yellow streak or a yellow bump right there, so I made sure to emphasize that. And you can kind of see how that's starting kind of before and after right there. All right, I think I need to just put it in time lapse and do a little work and come back and talk about it at the end and review with a couple of samples. All right, here we go. All right, here we go to wrap up this part. A couple things I haven't done yet. I have not come in here with some white and kind of use this as a blending tool. I hope you can kind of see the difference there. In the Google Slides, you'll see one photo of an eye. Actually, no, it happens in a different slideshow, but I can refer you to it, where the just the smoothness of it after blending with some white is a nice little way to go with that. I can do some down there as well. On the iris, I have not used any black yet on the outside. You certainly can, but I wouldn't let it just take over. Where's my black pencil? Oh, it's right here in my hand. You can kind of hit it a little bit darker out there and do some of those little spiky bits coming in. Remember, really important to let this darkness up on the top part of the iris happen. It just kind of goes right along with this darkness over here. It just really gives it that cool little depth, like the eyeball is really hiding and tucked in behind the eyelid. Also down here, I did some outlining, not in ink, but in black colored pencil. And that's totally fine to do that. Just try to make sure your pencil is kind of sharp so you can control the thickness. So some of that outlining can happen that way. I also did some definite little shading. I saw that this part right here looks like it was just kind of dripping over the top of this. So I enhanced that. I did some outlining, then I did some just basic overlap shading, getting darker right up next to this top one. Same kind of thing happens right here. And then I took some white and tried to lighten up that little spot right there. And that's the part that I think looks really cool, when you can get some of that depth going on. Anyway, we'll talk more about it in class. You can see how I kind of did some of those spikes. I left the inner area of the iris a little bit lighter. Again, the colors you choose are up to you. And there you go. I hope that makes sense.